Hi guys, and thanks for joining me on Design and a Half. In today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about something which is normally not necessarily as popular as one would think, and that's something that has to do with leadership and the fact that I've noticed that lately a lot of people seem to be a lot of people seem to be concerned with trying to climb up the ladder in a lot of ways, the corporate ladder, whether it's about career, whether it's about power, whether it's about making decisions. I think there's been an increase in this, and I believe to some extent that it's more or less related to the fact that we all want respect, we all want to be heard, and I think this is the main reason why a lot of people are sort of aiming for that leadership position within their organizations. And this has been sort of a motive for a lot of professionals to basically ditch the area where their expertises lie and sort of transition towards a management role just because that's the norm. However, the problem is that I've seen that a lot of companies also employ people that have little knowledge and that tend to be sort of aimed at adding stuff to their titles, which doesn't necessarily reflect their actual positions within the company. So I've seen a lot of companies that have only one employee, which call themselves CEO. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous if we got to this point where people started to actually call themselves CEO just because they have two employees in their company. I think it's basically ridiculous. And I think it comes from the fact that we all sort of want to emulate the power that is sort of shown to us in movies and in the companies that we've worked in. Because I think what we sort of associate with that position is power, is respect, is the ability to make changes. And I think to some extent we all want to make small changes, whether it's about our lives, whether it's about our jobs, whether it's about something else. And I think the main reason why we aspire to those top leadership positions is because we sort of feel a lack of worth. In a sense, and I don't mean that the people who reach those positions are not necessarily worthy. This is not about that. It's about the fact that we sort of want to climb the corporate ladder, not necessarily because we believe that it's what we should be doing, but because it's what everybody expects us to do, and we sort of got to the point where we expect ourselves to do the same thing in a way. And I think we sort of compare each other with other people that are in the same position or are in a better position, and tell each other that, well, if this person that has gotten into this position and knows less than I do has a lot more power over me than I have to actually change something, that's unfair. And to some extent, that is the main reason why a lot of us designers do the same thing and a lot of developers do the same thing. And I believe those are the biggest sort of drivers for most people to get to better positions and basically aim towards management. Not necessarily because it would make them happy, just because they sort of want to taste how it feels to be able to have a say in whenever a decision is being made. Because let's face it, if you're a guy like me, if you're a guy like an everyday Joe that's been working in an organization, you basically have no say in whatever the product is going, in wherever the company is heading. You're just basically there to complete someone else's vision, to complete someone else's strategy, and basically have none of your own, or actually not contribute to that company's success. And I think this is a big reason why a lot of young people are sort of starting to target startups more than as working places rather than existing companies, just because they believe that startups would give them a little bit of freedom, in the sense that they would allow them to be creative, to make decisions and influence the course of that company's future and welfare, if you will, and basically have the reins of their own lives into their own hands. Whereas in larger companies where you feel like you're just the person that's executing an order, your input is always sort of in a way disguised in this beautiful wrapping paper of course you're contributing. Look at all the good stuff that you've done, when in reality it's more about exactly how much you've outputted in terms of work, how much you manage to tick some boxes and make people happy and do lots of office politics. And I think that sort of differs in a lot of ways from the targets that most young people have when they're thinking about jobs, when they're thinking about their future. And it's basically the one thing that sort of created this schism between people that are looking for happiness, they are looking for fulfillment, they are looking to better themselves and to create products that actually have a say in the world, that make an impact, and people who are sort of looking for the traditional sense of success and gloating and basically just saying, okay, I got into this management position because I wanted to be just as good as so-and-so, because I've seen their Facebook picture or their LinkedIn profile and I think they're much more respected than I am. When in the end, it doesn't necessarily matter who's more respected than who. In the end, it's just about whatever makes you happy. If it makes you happy doing whatever it is that you currently do, don't necessarily compare yourself to other people. And I'm saying this ironically, even though I myself tend to do that a lot, not because I'm insecure, but because and not necessarily because I'm jealous of the other people's success, just because I'm always thinking about my past situations, the past companies that I've worked with, and think about how many people who didn't necessarily know what I were doing had an influence over the course of the company and of my own welfare. And I believe that's something that I cannot live with necessarily, or I'm not prepared to accept. And I think it's one of the reasons why some people also choose to go towards management, just because they want to take control into their own hands and because they genuinely believe they will do a better job than other people. It's not necessarily only about comparing. In some situations, obviously, it's about comparing and it's about keeping up with the Joneses in a way, and making sure that whatever it is that you are doing is sort of up to par with whatever your other people's jobs are, or sort of you're basically what you're trying to do is you're comparing your circle of friends with the people who are inside it, with other circles of people that you know, and basically always comparing statuses and making sure that your status doesn't necessarily fall between a certain threshold that you basically consider to be happiness, whereas it's just about leveraging power in a way, in a very obscure way, just because that specific position doesn't necessarily give you power. It gives you a voice, and this is the actual fact in today's society, because I think a lot of people also chase these management positions just because they feel that management is traditionally associated with having a voice in companies, in a lot of places. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people think that if I'm not going towards the management side, I'm never going to have a voice, I'm never going to have a say. And the reason why that actually happens is because management is the ones who are making the calls in the end. It's not the people who are doing the job, it's not the people who are proposing solutions. They are proposing solutions. They're basically pitching an idea. They're not making a call. Like I've seen and I've heard this a lot of times from a lot of people, like people saying, we are going to empower you to make this decision. But in the end, the funny story is that it's so perverse whenever someone comes to you and asks you, but what do you think? Shouldn't we do it like this and like that? And you say, okay, I'm not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this. I think it's better like this. And there's always this pitching of arguments, and at the end, in your head, you sort of lost that thread that you originally came with, and basically all of the clarity that you had is blown away, because you're at some point you're not trying to focus on solving the actual problem and giving a good solution, but actually trying to solve a political problem. Why? Because the person who's coming to you obviously has a bigger influence within the company than you, saying it's your management, and that sort of creates this power struggle, because it's not about the problem anymore. It's about the problem and keeping up the sort of relationship you have with the person who came to you with this counter proposal. And it's the biggest factor that I think drives, or one of the factors that drives a lot of people towards becoming managers themselves, because that way they feel like it's suddenly they can voice their own opinions, and that sort of gives them a warrant to make a decision without necessarily having second thoughts by 5-6 other people around them, making sure that whatever it is that they're deciding gets actually implemented. And this is, I think, a big factor for a lot of people who are looking to become managers. Some just do it obviously just because they love the position, because they are attracted towards this, because they have a natural inclination towards it, they have a propensity to do it, and they studied in this direction. They actually have a lot of experience, obviously. But there's also people who are looking to go towards this direction just because they feel like they want a voice. They feel like they want to contribute more in a strategic way. And I'm one of those people myself. Like, I've been in this situation several times, and I'm just making sure that I'm being transparent about it, so that I'm not being accused of holding something secret or whatever. I'm just being absolutely honest with everyone who's listening here, and not trying to hide anything. It's basically being honest with yourself as well as with other people. I think this is just one of the biggest things you can do for yourself, not lie to yourself. Anyways, getting back on point. So it's this whole situation with sort of trying to climb the corporate ladder has been basically one of the things that has driven a lot of people to just fake positions and fake their sort of management role in the company, just by adding all sorts of lead positions in there and asking for lead positions, even if there's like basically 2 people in the same team. It's freaking ridiculous. I mean, I haven't really. I try to understand their point of view, but it's very difficult for me, just because I believe to some extent all of those things should be coming with age, with maturity, and basically not necessarily. I don't necessarily see like biological age as a catalyst for experience, but to some extent. Experience does come with time, and biological time is also associated with experience to some extent, in the sense that obviously some people work on shit projects that basically give you no experience whatsoever. Like, there's no learning points there, but there's a lot to be learned in having worked on several types of projects for 5-10 years and so on. Like, that's the sort of seniority I would expect from someone who's promoting from an execution role to management role. Why? I think being able to promote from an execution to a management role gives you, as a manager, insight into how things are being done on a lower level, to be able to interface with that not necessarily lower level, because this could be interpreted as being politically incorrect. Whatever, I don't fucking care. It's basically management should understand the execution very well, just to be able to understand the limitations of execution, in order to have a good communication and a good relationship with execution. Because you as a manager depend on that execution role and the people you are working with in a team to be able to deliver something. So if you're fucking them up, and basically if you're always up in their grills or constantly bugging them, and that relationship is not going to work in the future. It's going to falter just because they're going to lose respect. They're going to distance themselves from you, and basically you're going to find yourself isolated from the team. You're going to be in the management pen, if you want to. You're no longer going to be in your own team. You're going to be isolated from them because you look at them from a high castle, from a vantage point, from an ivory tower, whatever you want to call it. You're not being a leader that's being in the middle of people. You're trying to lead from afar, and that's not how proper management and leadership should be done. Actually, you should be right in the middle of them, fighting with them, not against them or giving them orders. That's not really how management works. I'm sorry. And I think a lot of people have misunderstood the fact that leadership and leading teams means giving orders, having superiority, being arrogant, and being sort of pushy, if you will. You really have to understand that leadership is more about being a servant of the team that you are working with, rather than you being than them being your servants. That's the real dynamic of leadership in a lot of ways. That's how it should be working. That's how it should be creating a dynamic where the people who you work with are actually happy to assist you with whatever problem that you have. They want to please you, and they want to give you their own help just because they like you as a person. They don't feel like you're patronizing them. They don't feel like you're being a smartass or you're trying to ask them things that they wouldn't normally give you. Like, that's the sort of situation you should be addressing. That's how you should look at leadership. Obviously that's my opinion. I'm not an authority on that, but I think it's basic common sense to look at it from that perspective. And I think there's plenty of other people who would agree with this stance of being a servant leader rather than this sort of king person, this king persona who is overseeing a mass of minions and giving them orders. Like, that's just the most toxic way to look at leadership and at teams, if you will, and climbing the corporate ladder. That's not how you show and demonstrate compassion, empathy towards the people that you're working with, and that's not how you cultivate a collaborative culture in your organization. That is how you destroy your teams and you isolate yourself from them, and that is how people basically walk away from jobs. That is why people sort of walk away from managers like this, just because they have a feeling that they can't get along. The dynamic is really fucked up, and it's something that really has to change a lot of organizations. Like, a lot of people have to understand that whenever you're being promoted to a leadership role, to a management role, that doesn't necessarily mean and automatically mean that you should transform yourself into a huge asshole. No, you should be even more humble than you were before. Just because now you actually have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. You have the responsibility of the team that you're working with, and you have the responsibility of the project that you're managing, which is a totally different situation than being just you being told to have to hit some deadlines. It's different. It's totally different. The responsibility is totally different. And I think people should really understand that bit before they aim to become product owners, product managers, and other types of pompous titles that are currently going around. Like, you have to understand how the dynamic of a team is working before you become this sort of responsible person and have these responsibility roles attached to yourself. You have to be mature enough to know if you're ready for them, and sort of not lie to yourself knowing that you are not ready for them. And I think herein lies the challenge for a lot of the people out there, whether it's designers, whether it's developers, whatever it is. I think this is sort of the crux of the issue. Asking yourself and not really lying to yourself, being honest with yourself and telling yourself, am I actually ready for this, or should I actually read up on this and basically wait up until I think my sort of mentality is fit for this? Because obviously, if you're not, it's going to do you more harm than good to promote in a leadership role, and bring you more unhappiness than fulfillment. That was it for today's episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and a share if you so deem necessary. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope we'll see each other on Friday, I believe, because that's when I'm aiming to upload the next video. Take care, guys, and stay safe. Bye-bye.